now, but let's get started now with the conference. I'd just like to start to introduce myself. My name is Professor Rodney Stewart. I'm an academic here at Griffith University, one of the staff members. I've been here quite a long time. I'll be one of the co-chairs with Dr. Oz Sahin for the conference, and you'll get to see me over the next couple of days. Hopefully you enjoy your time here on the Gold Coast. You get to see some of the things that are happening, get to see some of the sites, get to do some travels around Australia while you're here as well. That would be great that you can make the most of your time here. So I just wanted to really start today to welcome you to the second Asia Pacific Sustainable Development of Energy, Water and Environment Systems Conference. I've been coming to this conference predominantly in Europe for a number of years. It's been a very enjoyable conference. I've met lots of esteemed colleagues from throughout the world that I continue to work and collaborate with. So that has been great for me as a researcher to be able to reach out to people to do large collaborative projects that have meaningful global impact. And I think this conference is a great interdisciplinary conference. So you have engineers, you have planners, you have scientists, you have people in business and management attend this conference. Some of the presentations are very technical, but some are very high level, related to strategy and policy, particularly around energy planning, water planning and management, and obviously sustainability planning. And that's one thing I like about this conference is that interdisciplinary nature and the idea of solving problems in a very interdisciplinary way than just a very narrow technical type of conference. As is tradition in Australia, we usually start with an acknowledgement of country. Griffith acknowledges the people who are the traditional custodians of the land and pays respect to elders past and present and extends that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. The Gold Coast is situated on the land of the Yugambeh language people. There's a number of parts to that, but the broader region of the Gold Coast is the Yugambeh language people. And I guess one of my reflections and one thing people are noticing more recently is looking back at history and looking at traditional peoples and traditional civilizations and starting to realize that they really knew about environmental engineering and management. So they knew about circular economy. They didn't have to study lots of books. It was sort of intrinsically trained from sort of a master to apprentice. So whenever you go to those communities, and I've traveled to some, you really see that there's a lot to learn from that local knowledge, applying appropriate technology and approaches when we actually develop our cities and communities. So I think that's a good reflection. So just some context to provide history. I started going to this conference in 2013 in Dubrovnik, which is quite some time ago. More recently, I've joined the scientific committee approximately 5 years ago. And as I said, really enjoy that interdisciplinary aspect to this conference and definitely proud to be part of the SDEWES community. So a lot of people with sustainable development of, energy, water and environment systems. So if you go to this conference long enough, people start to shorten that to SDEWES or other forms of that, but it's much easier to say than the long version. The conference itself, the main conference is really in Europe each year, rotates between Croatia, Dubrovnik, and then other cities throughout Europe. This year the conference is in Rome, so I encourage you, if you have the time and availability, to get to Rome and enjoy the conference there. The conference there has delegates over 500, so there'll be about 500 to 1,000. The Asia Pacific, version of the conference is relatively new. The first time we actually had this conference in 2020, April. So that was not a great time to have the first conference. But the organising committee from the SDEWES Centre, who are the organisation that really host this conference, they have an excellent group of technical and administrative support people that managed to convert basically a face-to-face conference to a pure online conference in a matter of months, 1 or 2 months. And they pulled it off, and it was a very successful online conference, and it's sort of a bit of a blueprint for a lot of other online conferences and how they're held now. So they continue to run an online conference that's very successful going forward. This is a relatively small conference. We have approximately 100 people for the conference, approximately 80 face-to-face, and then another 20, 40 people that are online as well. So firstly, I'd like to just obviously say some thanks to the people, obviously the attendees, people coming, making the effort to come and meet fellow researchers and practitioners, have some discussions around whatever particular area you're in, if you're in energy planning and management or water resources planning and management or general sustainability, whatever part of that, it's a great opportunity to meet and introduce yourself to other people and really just to get to know what they're doing and see if there's opportunities for collaboration going forward. Because all these problems are, there's problems here in Australia, but most of the problems covered in this conference, whether you go to the Asia Pacific or the Latin America or the European version of the conference, subtle differences in the major issues that people focus on, but the problems are largely the same. We need to transition to a sustainable economy going forward, and we need to do that in a way that's obviously, at least cost. All these things need to be covered off on, and our role as researchers really to do that. I'd also like to thank the various committees involved with this conference. So we have an organising committee, a programming committee, we have the scientific awards and other various committees associated with this conference. Later on, we'll have an award ceremony and the papers are reviewed and awards are provided for the best papers for the conference. I'd like to have special mention to the volunteers. So, as academics, we sign up our PhD researchers to assist with the conference, and we have quite a few PhD researchers you'll see on the reception desk or out in the corridor or lurking around. They're really here to help out, and we really thank those people. And also the people that reviewed the papers and involved in the papers. Many conferences are different, but this conference, it has the archival papers which are linked to special issue journals. So that's often a very attractive avenue for publishing for people that I'll talk about shortly. So just some really quick, reflections. So this is just some of my reflections as a researcher in this particular space. My research is mainly in energy and water planning. Really, as an interdisciplinary researcher, I'm an engineer originally, but I would say I work across a bit of economics, a bit of engineering, a bit of, change management. These are all the areas that I think as whatever discipline we come from, we need to broaden ourselves to be able to solve these problems or work with big groups of people to fill the gaps in the skill sets that we can actually overcome the challenges that we face. Because as we know, the technical solution might seem great on paper, but it rarely gets over the line when you start to overlay that through the lens of social, economic, political, whatever it may be. So we definitely need to have our eyes on that. So one of the reflections I have is really about, as a researcher, I really focus, and our PhDs always focus on the micro, right? We do very much a slice. And to get a PhD, you pretty much have to focus generally on a slice that's relatively manageable, especially within the budgets that the university gives PhD students to conduct research these days. So it's got to be manageable and within scope. But one thing you start to realize is those micro efforts that you do in terms of research projects and outputs in terms of publications or products or guidelines or whatever they happen to be, might be research-based or it might be practitioner-based, really eyes on the macro now. And that's one thing for me in terms of my learnings is, we need to start, getting better at conducting and socializing complex systems models and LCAs. LCAs, anyone who does environmental LCAs in the audience, or systems models, will realize how complex they are, and they're very complex for the average person. We need to somehow be able to communicate systems thinking in a better way. So that's one of the reflections we try and work on that and convey that, because many of the sustainable solutions that we have going forward actually have many perverse outcomes, that are unintended outcomes that we provide an engineering solution for, but may turn out to be not a great solution in the long term. But I think systems thinking and environmental LCAs at least brings up some of those perverted outcomes early in the piece, so we can maybe deviate the course of where we're going with things. Definitely a big fan of having some global pacts and agreements with support as required to achieve a common goal around sustainability, because I feel a lot of what is happening now around, say, minerals, around battery minerals and things like that, a lot of it with global markets is really about shifting burdens from advanced countries to developing countries. So we've seen that, where we want lithium, we want nickel, we want cobalt. The countries producing that, maybe advanced economies, good mining companies, maybe doing it in a relatively good way, industry best practice, but sometimes the market and the demand for those resources pushing mining and processing to countries that have the least environmental standards. So we're seeing some of those things, and I think about we've got to try and work out a way and have some global agreements to demise that shifting of burden. I do see a growth in greenwashing. Hopefully that's on the decline, but the business around green has been growing probably faster than the green products that are coming out. So I think we need a way to actually transparently assess different, I guess, product declarations or any statements around environmental, and really think about how we're going to manage that. Another bigger issue is GDP growth and living standards, promoting new ways of good living with less consumption. So that's a really hard one, because we do live in a society and we have countries that aspire to levels of consumption of advanced economies, but the growth model is really not sustainable. So how do we move away from that going forward? So that is one of the bigger macro challenges I think we have, because as a society we always talk about sustainable solutions, but not many people really talk about that materialism as being a bad thing in a way. So we definitely need that. And definitely, I'm seeing it more in Australia. Australia is getting much better at translating research, I would say, in the last 10 years. It's come from a very low base. Great researchers, but the translation has not been as good as it can be. But I've seen in the last 10 years at least effort and recognition that there needs to be much closer ties between government, industry, and research for that translation. So I think the effort is good, but that needs to go on an exponential journey, particularly around particular big picture problems, with a mission to really solve that going forward. So today you've come to the conference and just sort of to say what's next. I'll just talk very briefly for a few minutes really just about the SDEWES organisation, the conference and the special issue journals associated with the conference. Then we move into some introduction addresses. We have a number of introduction addresses, firstly with Professor Jennifer Bodie, who will be coming after Matt, myself, Professor Cara Beale. We have also Professor Nevin Duick, who's really the key person behind the organisation. He'll give a very big picture presentation. And then we'll move into sort of a coffee break. We'll have a photo, everyone, so please don't be shy, stick around, get a photo, try and look as good as you can in the photo. And then after that, we'll be having Professor Stuart White do the plenary keynote for the day. So, and then we move into the parallel sessions after lunch. So that's the general organisation for the day. I'll just quickly move into a very quick presentation that I have. That presentation is really just some general stats for the conference. So just bear with me while I share. This is really an overview about the conference itself, the SDEWES organisation, association that we have. So we have the International Centre for Sustainable Development of Energy, Water, and Environmental Systems based in Europe. As we say, it's a long-established organisation. The first conference for this series was held in 2002. So over 20 years ago, the core organisers initially came from University of Zagreb in Croatia and Instituto Superior Técnico in Lisbon, Portugal. So they sort of, I think Nevin was one of the core people, really probably sat round over a glass of wine and said, really, we need to have a conference that's more interdisciplinary, bringing together, you know, the electrical engineers with the, you know, the environmental engineers and the economists and start to try to solve problems at a bigger level. And that's what initiated those yearly conferences in Europe. And then more recently, those conferences have really, we have Latin America and also we have the Asia Pacific. So it's only in the last few years that the conference that was, it's quite a large conference in Europe, really spread to Latin America. So in this year in January, it was in Chile. They had a very nice conference in January. It was completed. It was a very successful conference. And we have this conference here in the Asia Pacific. So in Australia, in the future, it can be somewhere potentially in Japan or in Thailand or in Malaysia. So that will be the intention for this conference. And obviously it's a relatively small conference here today, but the intention is to grow the conference and the group within this particular region. And as we know, the Asia Pacific region is a fast-growing region. It's a large population, and it's many of the countries in the region are going from that newly industrialized to advanced economy sort of status. So they're fast-growing, but also coming with that change is also many environmental challenges. In terms of this conference, we have 110 participants, 22 countries, 50 cities and 60 universities. And as you can see there, lots of different flags. And that's a great thing about this conference is you will meet people from a range of different countries coming to the conference. And that's something I've always enjoyed about attending these conferences. And as you can see there, you have the different conferences. I didn't really mention there as well, there's also an Eastern European Regional Conference that is run. So that's another smaller conference that's run in Eastern Europe every second year as well. Now, The conference itself, it allows authors and presenters to have a number of different options around how they present and provide their research. So you can present from abstracts, you can present a short conference paper, and the main papers which many of the academics choose to present is what we call an archival paper. So I'm not sure if this archival, when I first saw archival, when I started going to this conference, it was a bit of a different term for me, archival for the journal papers, but essentially these are the larger, very comprehensive, you know, they're sort of 80% or more of what you'd see in a journal. And those particular archival papers, once accepted, once presented at the conference, which is compulsory to do, you will be basically put into a pool where the handling editors of the special issues that are listed here, we have in bold there is the current special issues. They basically be looking to select particular papers. So they're selecting those papers for their special issues based on obviously the topic and the suitability for that journal, but also they'll be selecting those based on also the quality as well, relative to the quality of the journal. Some of them, as you can see, you know, very high impact factor Q1. There is also some Q2 journals there as well. Most of the journals are Q1, Q2 journals that are linked to the conference. So just be aware later on in the year, it's usually towards the end of the year for those people that have the archival papers, you will receive an email asking you to provide preferences for particular journals, and later on you'll receive invites to submit your paper for the journal. You generally then will make the submission through the submission process of the journal and select the special issue that it will be listed within the journal lodgement system. So just be aware that, you know, when you go through that process, generally if you've made some, you know, minor improvements or refinements, they can be done at that stage. For the paper, it should be mostly there, but you might want to beef it up a little bit to make sure that it's of the standard for the particular journal. It will go through a review process in that journal, and Thomas Lab might talk a little bit more of the details about that later. There's also a journal linked to the organisation, which is the Journal of Sustainable Development of Energy, Water and Environment Systems. So very much connected to this particular conference. The editor-in-chief is Nevin and has an impact factor of 2.1. I think it's increased slightly recently as well. Indexed and Scopus as well. So just to acknowledge that there is this journal, and I believe the organisation is creating a new journal as well because the journal is becoming quite popular, and they're looking at creating a second journal as well. There's also, I should acknowledge, from that 2020 thing we don't talk about anymore, the online conference that was created is now an ongoing thing within the organisation. We encourage people to go into the system. You can see the hyperlink there, the virtual conference. It opens from Tuesday through to Saturday. You can go in, you can watch the videos. They're all pre-recorded there. You can see the presentations. It has a chat function to allow you to ask questions. And the authors are obliged to respond to those questions. So in the same way for the face-to-face conference to be considered for archival papers, you need to present and answer questions, even the tough ones. For the online conference, you are obliged to, the people will be asking questions, and the authors are obliged to then go in and answer those questions as part of that process as well. But more than just the obligation side, just more encouraged to have a look. There are some excellent presentations in the online conference. Obviously, some people can't travel for whatever reason, so this is a great mechanism for them to present their work as well. I did talk about the publishing rules. I think I covered that relatively well. If Nevin in his presentation or Tomislav wants to cover off a little bit more about the publishing rules, I'll let them do that as we go. So that just concludes a general welcome. We'll move into one of our first speakers today, Professor Jennifer Bodie. I'll invite Jennifer up to do her presentation. Just bear with me while I bring up her presentation. Sure. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you, Rodney, for your thought-provoking opening to this conference. I'm the Dean Sustainable Development Goals Performance for Griffith University, and my role at Griffith is really to enable the sustainability ambitions of the university. And I do that in three main ways. Firstly, it's about strategies and reporting. Secondly, it's about communications and engagement with both staff and students internally and externally with the local community. And thirdly, through rankings performance. So I'd really like to welcome you all here today, welcome you to Griffith University and to the beautiful Gold Coast campus as well. And I'm going to talk this morning a little bit about our approach to sustainable development at Griffith University. Before I do that, like Rodney, I too would like to acknowledge the Kombumerri people of the Yugambeh Nation as the traditional custodians of the lands that we're on today, and to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Oh, thanks Oz. So while Oz is sorting out the slides, I'll let you know that Griffith University is coming up to our 50th birthday. So we've been in operation since 1975. And over that time, our teaching and research has focused on addressing the most pressing global, social and environmental issues of our time. As an institution, we've always been deeply committed to the Asia Pacific. We've been environmentally aware and socially conscious in all that we do. We started in 1975 as one campus with 451 students, and we've grown to 5 campuses, about 50,000 students, over 4,000 staff, and we're spread across 4 different faculties. We've also, as a university, done reasonably well in rankings performance as it pertains to sustainability. So for the Times Higher Ed impact rankings for sustainability, in the last round we ranked 72nd as an institution, and we were in the top 30 for SDG 3, good health and wellbeing, and in the top 20 for SDG 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. We also ranked 40th in the QS World University rankings for sustainability. And in the area of governance within that particular ranking system, we ranked 12th in the globe and 1st in Australia. And part of the reason why we have done reasonably well in these particular rankings system is because we have a strong university strategic plan that outlines our commitment to measuring our social justice impact using the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It outlines our commitment to developing and implementing plans and strategies to address climate change, energy, waste, water, biodiversity. It outlines our commitment to research and doing research that aligns with the Sustainable Development Goals, and to developing and implementing curriculum that integrates sustainability. And I see that as a university, this all helps us play our part in creating a more socially just world and ensuring that we operate in a globally responsible way as a university. In 2023, we published our Sustainability Operating Framework, and this framework provides us with the outline of how we're going to deliver on our sustainable development commitments. So underneath the university strategic plan, we have our sustainability strategy for the university, which goes to 2030. And we also have a range of plans and policies, and we're in the development of an environmental management system at the moment. So our sustainability strategy was also released last year, and it was developed after a couple of years of intensive consultation and external benchmarking. And it focuses on 4 main areas: on academic, operations, engagement and governance. As an institution, we decided to keep our sustainability strategy broad, so not simply focusing on environmental sustainability, but all elements of the Sustainable Development Goals. And as part of the strategy, we see education and research as key to delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals. So we've committed to investing in research and research partnerships that have social, economic and environmental impact and align with our strengths and the Sustainable Development Goals. And we've also committed to promoting education for sustainability. So not just education that's about knowledge acquisition and skill development, but education that invites students to critically appraise their assumptions, their values, their beliefs, and work towards a more globally responsible world where we're able to tackle the global problems that we're facing. So this type of education is grounded in experiential and transformative learning, critical reflective practice, systems and future thinking, and inviting students to work in partnership with one another. So we're really committed to that as an institution as well. And I think what the Sustainability Operating Framework and the Sustainability Strategy and all of the wonderful staff at Griffith who you'll meet over the next few days have done means that we've been able to achieve a number of things. And I will try not to greenwash Rodney. I can't see where he is, but I will try not to do that. But we have done a lot of great things at this university and continue to do so because environmental sustainability and social justice is at the heart of what we do and always has been. So we do a lot in the academic space to engage our staff and students through things like Green Bites, SDG Files, which is our repository of projects around the Sustainable Development Goals. We have a Green Impact program. We run SDG games. Last year, through the installation of solar panels across our campuses and the creation of a solar farm, we managed to reduce our emissions by 44% over baseline year, which was in 2010, and that is continuing to increase. We installed more water meters to help us identify and remediate leaks and reduce our water consumption. And we've done a lot in the governance space as well. So I'm hoping that we continue to have an impact in this space. So I really hope you enjoy this conference over the next couple of days. I hope that you enjoy getting to learn about Griffith and what we're doing in the sustainable development space in energy, water and environment systems, and also learning from one another about the incredible work being done across the globe and the region. So thank you and have a wonderful couple of days.
Do we have any questions for Jennifer before she leaves? I want to fire any questions. Go on.
Thank you for that. What do you consider your boundary conditions when you analyze sustainability? Our university has been coupled with transport emissions to the university, but we sort of ignore that. Are you worried about transport emissions as part of your sustainability strategy?
Yeah, thank you so much for that great question. For those people who are online, I will just repeat it in case they hear it. The question is about transport and the emissions that come from that and whether we're concerned with that as a university. The short answer is yes, we are concerned about it. The longer answer is that we have a net zero emissions target of 2029, but within that target, we've only included scope 1, scope 2, and partial scope 3. And the partial scope 3 element we've included is aviation emissions. So it doesn't include the transport to and from campuses or between campuses. in saying that, we have formed a transport working party that reports to the Environmental Sustainability Committee that reports to the University Executive Group to look further at this. We have done a lot of work in transport in terms of we have got electric scooters that go between campuses. We've got ride sharing apps to encourage people to, you know, commute together to come to campus. And we do have targets around promoting more sustainable commuting options. But we have to do more work to actually understand the extent of the impact of transport and then identify ways of reducing that impact. So it's a work in progress that we are currently looking at. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Vijay from Indonesia. I wasn't for this, but I emphasize how it applies with Indonesia. Strategy looking at thinking every 5 years political agenda.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And for people online, you're expressing concerns about the changing political agenda every 5 years with new governments. Is that right? Yeah. And I don't have a solution to that, but I certainly share your concern. And it's one that we face in Australia as well, with state and federal governments changing, you know, potentially every 3 to 4 years. And so then there's a lot of short-term planning and not a lot of long-term planning. So it would be good to see some change in that regard. Yeah, thank you. Well, I might leave it there if there's no more questions or comments. But yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. And I really do hope you enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Rodney, can you open it through the share?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, our next presenter is Professor Cara Beale. Cara is the director for the SDEWES Research Institute.
Let's get that right, Rodney.
Here on the Gold Coast and Brisbane as well, so it's quite a large, diverse institute. It does have people coming from sciences, engineering, business, health. So pretty much every part of the university is involved in this institute, and it tries to really take an interdisciplinary approach to solving a range of cities or urban-related problems. So I'll hand it over to Cara. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. That was the first 3 slides, so I'll just jump to the other. No, thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. It's not raining, so we've had here on the Gold Coast and up in Nathan, we were across 5 campuses. We've had a bit of a wet kind of few weeks leading up to this, so we're really pleased to offer you some of our good Gold Coast weather. As Rodney said, my name's Cara Beale. I'm the director of the Cities Research Institute at Griffith University. I'll talk a little bit about that later. It's always good to have a little bit of an opportunity to spruik the institute. I also extend my respect to all First Nations people and elders and communities in Australia. We're across 5 campuses at Griffith University. And as Rodney said earlier today, I think we can take a lot of knowledge from First Nations across the globe, First Nations and Indigenous knowledge and practice and culture. And I just wonder, while we're thinking and listening to presentations over the next couple of days, maybe if we can follow and embed or draw on some of the world's oldest enduring cultures around managing the environment and the humans in changing climates, whether we would have been the issue, whether we would have the issues that we have if we maybe listen to our First Nations people a little more. So very passionate about that, and very much extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in the room and online today. So today I will, as is my privilege for a few minutes, spruik the Cities Research Institute, give a bit of an introduction around that, and then I wanted to talk about, which really leads on nicely from Rodney's comments and Jennifer's comments around Sustainable Development Goals, talk about some of the transformations in the EWE part of the SDEWES conference, the energy, water and environment. Yes, absolutely, it needs to be multidisciplinary, and absolutely wicked problems and challenges need a systems thinking solutions. But how do we actually operationalise that in the workforce? Do we have the right people in the right places, trained to the right levels? So just touching on a little bit of that for us to think about, excuse me, during the conference. So this is a picky of the Griffith Campus Cities Research Institute. Well, it's only level 3 in 2 rooms, but let's pretend it's the entire building. We do have some koalas in the campus across Gold Coast and Brisbane. So while you're around the campuses, look up and see. It's not quite the breeding season, I don't think, for koalas, but we do have plenty around. And there's always a nice reminder as to why we're doing this research and why we're working in this space, is to indeed look after our environment as well as the people and the infrastructure around it. So we've got 80 academics, a range of senior and ECR and MCR, good mix, and lots of PhD students and master's students in our centre, in our institute. And we cover, it's a challenge, but it's also a strength of the institute. We cover off on a lot of disciplines around the built environment and the human environment. So engineering, planning, particularly environmental planning, architecture, industrial design. We've got aviation, ecologists, human geographers, social scientists, environmental scientists like myself. And that all lends itself to naturally transdisciplinary work and naturally addressing that environment, energy, water research area. And we like to think of ourselves as academics. I was talking to Professor Stuart White earlier from the Institute of Sustainable Futures, also Damien's in the audience too, from UTS in Sydney, very much around that academic and that industry collaboration. If we can't deliver what industry wants, and we're really not kind of making those changes on the ground. So we're very much about that too. Again, we're in the built environment, but we're very close to nature, and we need to really think about, and these are not photoshopped pictures. These poor little cuddly guys have been, I think the one on the left is really quite recent as well. So we're working in a space where we are around nature, and to achieve these sustainable development goals and to achieve some real outcomes around working through climate change, through population increase, through development, we need to really think that systems thinking about everything that's involved in protecting our places and our spaces. So just a little bit more of the, we link very closely to the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, talking about anything from affordable housing, sustainable transport. There was a question asked about how we can be more sustainable in our transport to and from universities, but also within cities and communities. Decarbonising cities and communities, lots of buzzwords there, but they're all the sort of words that when we look toward our strategic research priorities and our ways of building more climate-dependent, climate-resilient development and infrastructure and cities and communities, we really need to think across that broad breadth of research. So the latest international panel of climate change, IPCC's 6th panel, I think, talked a lot about this climate-resilient development. And so I looked into it a little bit. And I think that's the way that we really need to move forward. And this sort of conference has really been doing that quite intuitively for many, many years now, is where, yes, we know we need to adapt to the climate and extreme weather events and sea level rise and storms and cyclones and drought and bushfires, etc. But let's do that in the most sustainable manner where we can also reduce greenhouse gas emissions as well. So let's have that climate resilient development. And so that's kind of what we're all about, I think. And again, we do a bunch of different things, lots of different disciplines, and also lots of ways of gathering that data and the knowledge exchange. So that's kind of enough spruiking for the Institute. So today in Australia, we tend to call it the SDEWES conference, but I know in Europe it's more the SDEWES. So between the two acronyms and our accents, we're really focusing on energy, water and environment. But as we know, that's all linked. So we're really focusing on generally the environment and the populations and the human and the infrastructure within that. Now, my next few slides are thinking about pretty much again what Rodney said and what I said in my introduction is, are we ready? Are we equipped as a workforce? Are we equipped as an education sector to be able to provide some of these solutions, be able to realise some of what we might talk about and end up in these great conclusions after conferences? And we talk a lot about the challenges. We talk a little less about solutions, but more and more. And I use the word solutions kind of liberally because it's, you know, there's more than one and they may only be short-term rather than long-term, etc. But how do we operationalise that in community and in cities? And we really can only do that by us and our skill sets and, of course, grants and government and so on. But so I wanted to talk a bit about, you probably can't see this very well. So on the left is the cost for resourcing and retaining skilled workforce, and on the right are some opportunities to work in the environment, water, energy sector. And these are just some thoughts. So as Rodney said, he had those lovely clouds up there and he talked more and more about, well, it's beyond just engineering, or it's beyond just pumps and pipes and plants and so on. It's more about how we come together as more broadly as looking after the built environment. We need a bunch of different disciplines. So when we first started out hearing about climate change or securing our water supplies or environmental protection, environmental science, particularly if we're talking about service delivery of water and energy, really the discipline was generally engineering, some trades, plumbers, electricians and so on, just a fairly small kind of cohort of skilled workforce. As we go through time, we're seeing a lot more disciplines coming out there in terms of not just engineers or a plethora of different types of engineering, civil, environmental, mechanical, chemical, etc., structural and so on. Sure, we still have the trades and the certificates, but there's more options in education, not just universities, but TAFEs and short courses. We're heading toward micro-credentialing, etc. But also we're starting to think about the IT and the technical, and we need more human resources and business and accounting and so on. So we're increasing our skill sets, we're increasing our knowledge, and we're really increasing in our space of delivering safe water and reliable energy more and more and more. And now we're heading toward, we can't just have a couple of engineers, a human resource person, a couple of tradies out there, and maybe an economist or an IT guy. We need all sorts of things. So in the larger water and energy utilities, we might have change managers, we might have organisational psychologists, we might have, well, we're getting toward that, the AI and the ICT and the really sophisticated specialist professionals, and of course lawyers and so on and so forth. So for a successful, I'm just thinking, say, the urban utilities is our water service provider in Brisbane. Down here it's through the city of Gold Coast, but also we've got Sydney Water, and these big service provider companies have massive, huge staff with lots of different disciplines. So with that comes some challenges. So the last 50 years has seen an increasing need for that multidisciplinary skill set, really to tackle the environmental challenges and emerging technologies and so on. So we've seen significant changes to the makeup of the energy, water, environment sector, and we're not necessarily catching up with those changes. We're not necessarily being able to educate and train at that pace, particularly when we're talking digital and AI and so on. We've seen a rise in the younger engineering and environmental professionals. I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but certainly in Australia, we've seen more young people seeing it as an interesting area to get into. We've seen more women, more people of other different cultural backgrounds, and I think that diversity of employees really lends itself again to that good transdisciplinary thinking and ways of approaching these really tricky global problems. So the next couple of slides, I just want to focus on, there's a bunch of current or emerging challenges in our energy, water, environment space, but I'd like to look at a couple of examples. Firstly, the infrastructure, well, the vulnerability of our built infrastructure when we're delivering our water and energy and food and so on services, specifically to the climate change and extreme weather events. And then also my other one's looking at AI and digital, enabling the digital environment. So everywhere, everyone probably in this room has in some way been touched directly or indirectly with the impacts to climate change. I know in Australia, we have a big country. We have a bunch of different geographies, and with them, we have a bunch of different kind of microclimates within those geographies. So we can have bushfire and drought in one state, and then flooding and too much water in another state or territory. We can have cyclones up in the north and then unexpected snowfalls in the south. So we're very vulnerable to climate change indeed, and that's happening very sadly all the time, particularly more and more in our urban populations and in built-up areas. But this is an opportunity to learn from disasters and understand, design, build, maintain and operate this climate resilient infrastructure, I think. So we need to build resilience into all our new infrastructure. So we need our designers and our planners and all that range of disciplines to really ensure that that happens. Some barriers, some considerations, there's known and unknowns. The weather events are always changing. We're meant to be in a El Nino cycle, I think, but it's the wettest summer I can remember. And then they're now talking about a La Nina cycle where it's much wetter, supposedly. So we're still trying to get it right. So that's a big barrier to how we might sort of make our infrastructure resilient. Construction and waste management's a massive issue. Certainly when we talk about renewables and photovoltaics and batteries and so on, what do we do with that waste? How do we do that in the most sustainable manner? So those workforce implications creates that need for a diverse, multi-skilled workforce, which we'll talk about. And as Rodney says, we really see a beautiful diversity of disciplines in the next couple of days with our technical papers. Systems thinking beyond water or energy or environment, but systems thinking across the whole board, and brave leadership as well. Bold investments, place-based thinking. An example here, we did a bit of an example in the Torres Strait. So for those of you who are not familiar, our closest neighbour by 4 kilometres in Australia is Papua New Guinea. So we have our Torres Strait Island communities, of which some of them, well, I'm not a very good swimmer, but if you are good swimmers, you have to be quick swimmers too, because there's some sharks up there and crocodiles, but you could swim. You could swim from the most furthest island in the Torres Straits to New Guinea. They're really, really close. So we're right up there, very vulnerable to a lot of these climate impacts, particularly sea level rise, storm surges, cyclones, and indeed water scarcity, funnily enough, in that tropical area. It's just not raining as frequently. So we did a little bit of a broad brush on some vulnerability of this infrastructure to the climate hazards. And found that some, and again, this is the importance of place-based and talking to people and communities, some of the water systems were not so bad with say extreme temperatures or bushfires or rainfall, such as desal or those climate-independent sources. But other water systems are very vulnerable to damage or poor performance or reliability. So again, it's just an example of how we need to think really beyond, and we know this, but how we actually operationalise that and make that happen out in the real world is something we always need to consider as well. The second kind of challenge, it's not emerging, it's here with us, and I do see it as a challenge, not a threat, is AI, and then the digital and the agile enablers for providing our water and our energy and looking after our environment. It's inevitable and it's here, and the advantages is it will absolutely optimise the efficient delivery of our resources and our essential services. Some examples could be some digital twinning and smart meters and AI and recognition of some automated recognition of processes and so on. I know we've got a few people in the audience here where that's their bread and butter. But there are some barriers around that. So, and again, it relates to multidisciplinary and skill sets in the workforce. It's increasingly sophisticated technology, and it's something that a specialist really can only help to then translate that into how it might actually be useful out in the ground, how it might be useful to achieve our sustainable development goals, to look at how we might do climate resilient development. So again, look at the micro, as Rodney nicely put it, out to the macro. Or did you say macro to micro? Let's pretend you said micro to macro, and then that fits my argument nicely. But so specific tools for those broader goals. So the workforce implications there, upskilling and new skill sets. It'd be great if the existing capacity of a utility might be able to deliver and work with AI and ICT and so on, but that's not likely. So we need to really think about who you're skilling up, and then how you might, then what you might have to do with some of the staff that aren't necessarily as skilled in those spaces. So it's very tricky. The training centres and university need to kind of recognise and embed those relevant courses and qualifications. It's no good saying, hey, we're doing AI and we need to be digitally labelled water utility or energy utility, but if our students and trades are not teaching that, then we start to get a bit stuck. So some examples here again, back in remote community work, Indigenous work where I do my research, is looking at how we might use a co-designed app with local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and people, how we might work with them to co-design a water and energy app that can then start recognising some water security issues or blackouts with the energy and unreliable energy, poor water quality, too much water being used and so on, and how we can work with communities, because there's a lot of data being generated. We know that we need data. Service providers know that we need to put smart meters in, or that we're heading into this AI and digital age, but we're still not quite sure what to do with that data and how we can actually use that in a way that will progress our boundaries of ignorance kind of out a bit more. And the other example is Rodney's group has done a lot, indeed with some of the colleagues in the audience here, on around not just smart water metering, but generally big data analysis and that maturing and sophistication of metering and digital twinning and that digitally enabled utility provision. So that kind of wraps up some of my thought process around some of the challenges we can think about as we head into these next couple of days around energy, water and the environment. It's not just about managing pumps, pipes, PVs and water plants or energy plants. It really is about the people, whether it's in the workforce or whether it's the communities you're seeking to improve and everything in between. So yeah, let's kind of, and we are a very systems thinking crowd. Let's continue doing that and really think about how we can also include any Indigenous or First Nations or traditional science and knowledge and culture as well. As I said earlier, I think we've got a lot to learn from not necessarily Western science and ways of doing and knowing. And we need some bold and brave leadership, be it in a small research team or out in consultancy or in industry or in government. Sometimes people that might be traditionally in technical fixes or technical or engineering solutions may not always want to talk about people and systems thinking and social science and so on, but it's absolutely essential if we really, really want to make change in this space. Ageing workforce, better value proposition for getting our younger people into the sector, and turn challenges of climate change and AI and so on into opportunities and drivers to really diversify our sector. So enjoy the conference, and while you're listening to lots of great papers and hopefully not just problems but solutions or best practice approaches, think about how we can then do the next step and translate that into really making some change on the ground. Thanks, guys.
We have some questions for Cara. Okay. Yes, please. Talk about it.
Okay, I'm again from Indonesia. Interesting the connection between the environment and the behavior of people. So, how to correlate people behavior by given
Missed the middle bit of that, sorry. How to
create people's behavior
Ah,
by
yes.
developing the environment.
Yes, yes. So the question for our online audience was just a minor one. How do we do behaviour change for people, I guess, so we're saying create a behavioural difference in how we think about, is that right? How we think about,
I was thinking if we develop it will change people's behavior, but how it is connected.
That's good. Good question. So how are we connecting people's behaviour with changing and development in the environment?
Yes.
It's I guess, going back to those first principles of behaviour change with people is that we need to know what's good for us. We need to see the benefits, the community and organisational benefits of why would we change? Why would we think beyond our own backyard? So I think to really embed the benefits of thinking in a sustainable systems thinking manner, and then ongoing training from an early age within schools and universities and so on, really start to just have systems thinking and transdisciplinary approaches right from the word go. So nothing small, just changing the entire education sector to start with, and then ongoing prompts and engagement, and we all want to know what's in it for us ultimately. More pictures of koala bears as well to see the reality. I'm thinking that's a bit silly, but to see the reality of what we're working in the environment we're working in. So that's really not a very good answer, but it's a really good question that I think is something that we always need to think about. What is happening? How to get the technology side and the development side into more of a kind of a human-based, nature-based approach. You ask great questions, and we're not able to answer them very well.
A question.
Thank you very much. So, Will from SDEWES. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you, Kara. Kara and Rodney were my supervisors in my PhD. It's a pleasure to see you all here and
Lovely to see you.
this nice conference. So, really good. And like during my PhD, we did a lot of studies about water energy nexus and so on. But as a practitioner in the industry for many years, I see that setting the problem is really hard, like understanding what we are aiming for, and you show like the sustainable development goals and the myriad of things that we are trying to achieve, and there is this multi-criteria analysis that we have to do all the time. Graham myself, it's my work colleague at SDEWES Water, we do a lot of that, and we see that we are sometimes overwhelmed with the amount of criteria and how to optimize. And optimization is key. So the key here, we are talking about energy, water, and sustainability. How are we setting, like really aiming the future and translating this policy from sustainable development to real, like tangible things that we can measure? My question is, how are we gonna be aligned and really targeted to actually achieve something? Because as Rob mentioned, it can be a little bit of greenwashing, and we are not being focused. So my question is around how we get these big aims very blurred to very targeted and focused.
Well, I would start thinking the other way. I'd go target and focus bite-sized pieces of work or research where the experts in that particular question. So nothing to solve the world. This is people, you're focusing on a question of what you can do, where the expertise is, and then where you want it to go into small increments. That kind of average of we all work together. And to help with that puzzle, and that will be so if we think, oh my gosh, we've got to tick off on SDG 6 and 8 and 14 in 5 weeks, and we've only got, you know, $40,000 from industry to do so or whatever. It's not going to happen, and we're all just going to be complaining. But if you think about, okay, this is an area where we experience that, these are some of the resource challenges or the industry challenges in that space, and work is small, with collectively we can kind of start getting a bigger picture. But that again is a little bit of greenwashing, because how does that actually happen? That requires good collaboration, industry, academic, government funding and so on. But I would suggest small, bite size, because we're all very overwhelmed in this space. But there's some good things happening, and conferences like these also help, and I think we're genuinely collaborating for which bits of the puzzle. I'm looking on this a little bit, oh, you're on this a little bit, this a little bit, and the big puzzle is this, the genes, or what we're going to, you know, happen after that. Yeah. Okay, it's another question. Okay.
Yes.
Michael wants to the rescue one hand. You didn't say too much about the political side of the equation. Some of what you're talking about involves trade-offs, and left and right sometimes have different views on what needs to be traded off. So how do you bring both parties along the journey towards a better, more sustainable future?
Yeah, very good point, and it lends itself to the question about those short-term or those funding cycles and hot potato cycles of 3, 4, 5 year political cycles. Well, I mean, this is all ideological answers, really, but to try and take the politics out of it, and again, I don't agree up that is the real answer. Is again to see beyond, to try and touch the human side, the benefits, the collective good. Again, that's very hard to do. But I also think we go back to the economics of not being sustainable, the economics and the negative impacts of not, or continue on with business as usual. And that will touch anyone regardless of where they're voting. And to try and see, look, I don't know, it's a very good question, but try and see beyond the next election, but I think, sadly, I think the media in some ways have got a good role to play, because we're all seeing now inside of the political kind of pendulum, real issues, real tangible sadness and devastation, and more of that, not that it's just enough to see, but more of those things where it's actually touching humans, touching us. Yeah, I don't know, again, it's a tricky question. You know, I didn't touch on it, it's hard. Good point, Michael, thank you.
Oh, we have a question. Yes.
What about inequality?
Inequality?
Yes.
Yes.
Isn't that the first thing that we should actually
Yes.
deal with? Because
Yes.
we deal with inequality and all the other political changes,
Yes.
much easier
Yes.
to do so. Do you do some research on inequality?
Not directly, but I guess I do work. Well, firstly, as a female, we started in the 90s in the engineering world. In who, I was very, there was me and maybe the woman who might make a cup of tea. I was often asked if I could make a cup of tea, and I was actually saying I'm presenting. Millions of, I can give you a lot of examples. I also work with indigenous communities and lower middle income country communities. So again, how do we deal with that? And yes, if we deal with that, other SDGs and other challenges start to become, it's complex themselves in a sense. That, I think, is changing. I think it was a positive story in that in some countries, or in some parts of some countries, but that's a slow burn, and that's related to government as well, I think, and related to culture and knowledge and practice. Sometimes that leads in with, it needs to be pulled out. But that's a tricky one. but very mindful of inequality, very, I think it's getting better in some countries.
Well, it was good global.
Global, yeah.
Global.
Yeah, yes.
Global, global.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're slow, us students are very slow to change. But we're getting there. I want to end a bit positively as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Professor Cara Beale, for your presentation today. So next as our presenter is Professor Nevin Julik. Nevin is the chair of the SDEWES organisation in Europe. He's also a chair professor within the University of Zagreb, and Nevin will generally, he provides a very high level, thought-provoking presentation. So I'm sure that's what we'll see today. So I'll hand over to Nevin.
Thank you, Rodney. Well, you said quite a lot about SDEWES conference series, and I think we are doing very fine. The teachers are starting to listen to our solutions, and a very recent news is that our chair of International Scientific Committee, Professor Maria Graça Carvalho, was invited to be Minister of Climate and Energy of Portugal in the new government. So we are slowly doing the influence, and that is important. But why did we actually start SDEWES conference series? Why such a wide conference? Up to that point, most of the conferences were trade, professional, relatively narrow, because that was the best way how to get finance from the industry. But we decided to go to this very wide format to look at things from different sides. It is because we think, and we thought at that time, that the problems of future cannot be solved from individual trades, from the experts, which are very specialized. You have to have a very wide overview of the issues, and you have to balance those issues. And sustainability is about balancing different issues. You have to do multi-criteria approach. For example, one of those very complicated problems of the last 30, 40 years is climate energy conundrum. We know the climate is doing very badly. On the other hand, we need energy for sustaining our lives. How to decouple energy from climate damaging gases. And this cannot be solved if you're just a professional in one field. We have to look at from a much wider scope. Also, circular economy is a very multi-sectoral thing. We have to look at it from different angles. We also have to look at the interplay between technical, economical, and social aspects. You asked about inequality. It's a very important question, but we are actually doing amazingly well in the last 20 years. On a global level, if you read Branko Milanovic and his elephant curve, that was the best period ever for making people more equal. And when you travel now in developing countries, you see these people are getting much, much better. The problem with inequality is inside some countries. That is true, but this is something that individual countries have tried to solve internally. So it looks like a neoliberal global society is good for equality, which is not really what we would expect coming from Eastern Europe background. But this is what Branko Milanovic data shows. Unfortunately, it seems we're heading towards coupling. If that happens, the inequality will become a serious issue. But yes, that's a very important part of this conundrum of looking from different sides. Let me dwell a little bit more into climate energy access, because that's my field. We have all the technologies needed to save the climate and continue living nice life as we are used to. It's actually cheaper to do it than not to do it. So we would save money, significant amounts of money, and it's quite clear since at least 2012 in the National Energy Agency report that it is much cheaper to do the transition than not to do the transition. So why we are not doing it? And it can be done very quickly. It's because of socio-political barriers to change. There are people who have jobs in all sectors. It's not easy to change that. Economies are based on all sectors. We have to manage this transition in a way that will be not too painful for people. Otherwise, politicians will lose power and we might get lots of trouble. So techno-economically we can do it, but we have to, as engineers, also understand this socio-political side of the problem. Also, geopolitical barriers are significant because some of the countries are exporting climate damaging fuels, and we have to find new business models for that. Because if we don't do that, we are going to have the situation we have now in Europe with Russia and war in Ukraine. This is very much related to this issue. It's quite clear that wind and solar are going to be main sources of primary energy in the future because they're so much cheaper than anything else. This is clear. I mean, there will be some places which have a lot of hydro and geothermal, like New Zealand, etc. But most of the world will be based on wind and solar. So how do we solve this problem? Maybe to push this up. We should overbuild wind and solar. The red line is the legacy electricity demand. It's current electricity demand. If we build 3 times more wind and solar, then we actually need electricity to cover historical electricity demand. We basically, on a continental level, get baseload wind and solar. At least in Europe, that has been shown for at least last 6 years. We have baseload wind. You need a lot of grids to bring electricity from one side to another, but not so much as it looks in the first sight. The problem with such approach is then how do we economically put to use this excess electricity above the red line? That's why we electrify heating, which in Europe is very significant. It's around 40% of final energy demand. We electrify transport, which is going to happen everywhere anyway, and we are still with maybe 40% excess, which we can convert to hydrogen and use for industrial uses, production of fuels, chemicals industry, feedstocks, etc. We're going to need a lot of hydrogen. So this is the way we can do transition in countries which are outside of the solar belt. For solar belt countries, which have a small difference, seasonal difference between insolation, winter and summer, they can do everything on solar and batteries. But outside of this 35 north to 35 south, we will need quite a lot of wind because of the differences between insolation and winter and summer. Okay, now I have to click back here. Yeah, so let's look, where are we going to use hydrogen? We are certainly not going to use it for residential heating because we can do that with electricity easily. But we are going to need it for some other purposes. For sure, we will need feedstocks for our chemical industry and for refineries. We are going to need it for long-distance shipping and long-distance flying, because these will not be electrified. We will not achieve such energy densities for the batteries. There is still an open question for long-haul tracks, but it seems the battery solutions are coming to the market. High-temperature processes, we can electrify most of them, but we are most probably not going to do that because to electrify, you need to build a new plant. And you can use an old cement plant for 100 years. So why would you build a new one if you can use the old one? Unless the price differential, which is significant, pushing the investment, most probably we will be just putting hydrogen instead of fossil fuels in such plants. Everything else will be electrified because this is much easier to do than to bring hydrogen to those uses. Okay, again, the slide. The global wind resources are available really everywhere, but somewhere they're really much better than in other places. Again, I have to move because this part of the world is interesting. You can see that Australia has a relatively reasonable wind resource. New Zealand has excellent, but there are also other places with excellent wind resource. So they will be competing in the production of hydrogen. Solar, Australia is excellent with solar potential, but we have many other places. So who is going to be producing fuels and exporting them around? What Irena thinks is that global energy trades will move very much from oil towards new fuels. Much more electricity, hydrogen, ammonia, methanol will be the main fuels of future. That will be traded because in some places it's cheaper to produce it, in some places it's more expensive to produce it. So if you look at Australia, it has a very good competing position to become an exporter of hydrogen. But hydrogen can only be exported thermodynamically, feasibly by pipelines. We are probably not going to do the liquid hydrogen. So that's probably feasible for Southeast Asia exports, but anything further than that will most probably be ammonia. I think Australia might be a big player in ammonia in the future. But we will need also a lot of biomass to produce methanol. And New Zealand might be an interesting player because they have so much biomass and so much renewables. But we'll see who will be a big player in this market. Who wants to start first will probably win in the future. What we can expect is that there will be two significant regions which will import fuels. Europe, which is very dense in its energy consumption, and East Asia and Southeast Asia. So these areas are populated and have lots of industry and don't have enough space. So areas which have more space will be exporting fuels to those areas. So Australia has a very good chance to keep its secret of success, which is a resource-based economy in future. Just the resources will be different. Let's see how it happens. I don't have an acknowledgement slide, but I remember reading Bruce Chatwin's songlines, and I was really fascinated by the ways that the local guardians were mapping their pathways around this continent, which is not easy. What is coming out of the book, traveling is very important for people. So we need to decarbonize this traveling, so we can still come to Australia and we can go to Europe, but we should not be damaging climate with that. Thank you.
Like Evan says, we've still got a bright future in Australia exporting resources. So, that's good. I think we have some questions in Evan.
You talked a fair bit about hydrogen fuel. My understanding, I'm not an expert in this field, is that hydrogen is generally created from natural gas, fossil fuel, cracking. So how does that go towards a decarbonisation future?
Okay, so currently probably 98% is created by cracking either gas or coal or whatever. But it's a question of price. The cost of grey hydrogen, of such hydrogen, is around 1.5 to euros or US dollars per kilogram of hydrogen. You can also produce hydrogen by electrolysis, which is quite expensive today. It's around, let's say, 4 or 5 euros or US dollars per kilogram. One of the reasons for being so expensive is that electrolyzers are around $1,000 per kilowatt. And the strategy of Europe is to subsidize investing 40 gigawatt of electrolyzers by 2030, and it's expected that such massification of production of electrolyzers will reduce its cost to $300 US dollars per kilowatt. Other thing that is important is the cost of electricity. For example, from March till probably October, November, electricity is often free of charge in Europe during the day because of a lot of solar energy, and also during the night. So we are heading by 2030 into the world when half of the time electricity will be under 20 US dollars per megawatt hour. So you have cheap electricity and cheap electrolyzer. And by 2030, we think green hydrogen will be around 1.5 to 2 US dollars per kilogram, competitive with the gray one. And then we have another tool, which is carbon tax or emission trading, and we will make natural gas so expensive that we will just kill that sector. But we first have to build the new one before we kill the old one. We need a lot of hydrogen. We are using 2% of final energy demand in Europe is hydrogen. 2%, yes.
Yes, sorry. Any other questions? This is definitely one of the hot topics of the transition towards a hydrogen economy, and also the batteries versus the hydrogen. At what point? What is the sensible use of hydrogen? Do you have any other questions? Yes.
Hello. I'm a lecturer. I'm the University of Zagreb. What is your stance on golden hydrogen or the white one?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a geologist, so if you find it, we'll use it. But the question is this white hydrogen, which is probably appearing because of the association of natural gas underground, what is happening with the C part? If the C part is staying underground, then this hydrogen is good. But if it seeps out, then we don't really want to mess with it. So this is something you have to prove, but I have not enough knowledge about it. On the other hand, as I said, because of the variability of wind and solar, we will produce huge quantities of green hydrogen anyway, so then it will be competing with this green hydrogen. And the question is, can you make it even cheaper? Maybe you can. Then we will have to reduce the cost of electrolyzers to 100.
Damien.
Damien Jordan from the University of Technology, Sydney. I was interested to ask, with your experience of many conferences in different parts of the world, what are the inspiring examples that are front of mind for you about places that are getting the transition right?
Okay. One place which I was really fascinated with, and I'm sure nobody heard about it, it's Brazilian state Rio Grande do Norte. A friend of mine was Secretary for Energy of that state for 4 years, and in 4 years he increased the share of wind compared to the demand from around 20% to 260%. So basically, in 4 years, he did all the decarbonization, because if you offset transport, which is still partially fossil fuel, but Brazilians use ethanol, that state is 100% renewable, or more than 100% renewable for already now 6-7 years. That guy is now the chairman of Petrobras, which is interesting. That's why he didn't have problems, because he is the old guy. And Rio Grande do Norte is the place where Petrobras has production of gas and oil, but it's the place with one of the best wind potentials. So there was no fossil fuel lobby that could stop it, because fossil fuel lobby was actually pushing the wind there. So this is one interesting example. It shows the way how to use the advantages of oil companies, because they have the capital, they have the knowledge, they have the strength to develop, for example, offshore wind, because for that you need those are big projects, and they could help us with that very efficiently. Other places that are quite interesting, I haven't been there. It's Tokelau. It's a small nation in Pacific, 2,000 people, which is 100% solar since 2012. It can be done. But then you have Yemen, a country with in war, which has one of the highest percentage of solar energy. They're not doing it because of good policy, they're doing it because of solar is a good solution in bad situation. When you have war, when you don't have a grid, solar can save. So there are a lot of really good examples. Denmark was the country that developed wind as energy. They started in the 1980s, invested a lot of money in that, and they are now reaping benefits because they are exporting technology. They are now 56% running on wind, and they also kind of pioneered power-to-heat technology. So they're storing excess wind into heat, and they need a lot of heat, and in this way they can have a 56% and probably 80% renewable in total in a flat country without any hydro. Sorry? Costa Rica, Uruguay, Paraguay, but these are very much hydro guys. Whoever has hydro, it's easy. Yeah. Tasmania, for example. That's easy to make 100% renewable. It's more difficult if you don't have hydro, but it can be done. And it can be done very quickly.
So you say it's easy to make renewable energy with hydro, but if we're talking systematically and LCA and beyond just a technical solution, what would be some of those perverse outcomes with hydro or with hydrogen or if using biomass from New Zealand or I'd be interested in the perspective of what's
So perverse effects. Yeah. Hydro is very damaging for nature, can be very damaging for nature.
Yes.
So you're really going to think, are you going to build hydro? I'm not an environmental expert, but there are many issues. Because basically if you do a dam, you kill the whole river. But if your river is already dammed, then it doesn't matter if you build another dam, it's already dammed. Americans have started to deconstruct hydro in the northwest part because of salmon. So this is also a possibility, but I would not be too judgy. I would say if we have hydro, we can use it. If we don't have hydro, and if it cannot be built, we can do it other ways. Hydrogen is doesn't have a huge environmental impact if we do it correctly. The problem is hydrogen is a greenhouse gas, which has around GWP of 5, which is not negligible. So we should avoid fugitive hydrogen in all ways. But this can be done. I mean, we started with gas by gasifying coal and delivering CO and hydrogen mixture to houses, and people were not dying in masses. It was not exploding. We can do it. Engineers can solve all the problems. But to me, it doesn't make sense to deliver gas to houses anymore because we can electrify everything. We produce hydrogen on the spot in industry, we produce fuels, feedstocks, or high temperature industrial processes.
All right, well, I think this is one of our areas we will be talking about. I'd like to thank Professor We're just going to get Professor Tomislav Puchek. He's just going to come up and give a little bit of a summary about the conference, the social event, and everything else. I'll just hand it over there.
Okay, so
You can just.
okay, I'll be very brief. Basically, this conference is, as you probably already figured out, we are like a hybrid conference, which means we have an online part and we have an on-site part of the conference. And that is the reason why we made you present or video your presentations before, because we wanted all the participants have the same opportunity. So all the participants that are in the online part of the conference, they will now also have an opportunity to see your research and see your work. So this is the reason. But whether you're online or you're on site, the key issue is that you present your research. So it is very important that all the presentations are presented. So for presentations that are on site, you have to be in your session presenting your work. And of course, for the online part, all the questions in the online part of the conference need to be answered before the conference ends. This is obligatory. In case we have a presentation not presented, unfortunately we will have to cancel your presentations, which is not such a good thing. If you're presenting here, then we kindly ask you to come around 15 minutes before your session to the room. One option is to give your presentation to one of our colleagues at the registration desk, but you can also bring your presentation right to the session like 15 minutes before. If you're chairing a session here, the same rule applies. I would encourage you to come around 15 minutes before the session. You will receive all the materials and documents from one of our volunteers with all the instructions, so you don't have to worry about anything. When it comes to the program itself, we are the venue is quite compact, as you can see. So this is the main room where we'll have the invited lecture and part of the sessions tomorrow, but all the sessions will be right in front, like in the corridor. So you have 3 rooms for the session, and 1 room is just straight down the corridor. You just go out, but it's right there. When it comes to the social part, so of course we will have coffee breaks, we will have lunch. You all got your lunch coupons here. Lunch and the coffee break will be served right in front. And tomorrow, after the invited lectures and lunch, we will go for the social trip, which you also have a ticket for. So I encourage you to always wear your name tag, because we need to be sure that you're a part of the conference. And here as well, you will have all the information needed for the social trip and all the lunch coupons. That's it, more or less. Those are the main pointers, administrative pointers for the conference. Once again, I'm very happy to be able to welcome you all here in Gold Coast, and I hope you have a good conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomislav. Next up, we have the final part of this morning's session. We have Natasha Markovska. She's the SDEWES Vice President, and she will be presenting the awards for the conference. So I'll hand it over to Natasha.
Thank you, Rodney. Serving as chair of the SDEWES Award Committee, it is a privilege and an honor to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the award session of the second Asia Pacific SDEWES Conference. In this session, we come together to celebrate the remarkable achievement of authors within the SDEWES community. Today, we will recognize and honor the authors of the 3 best papers. This session promises to be a momentous occasion where we will acknowledge the outstanding work and dedication of our community members. So, thank you for joining us, and let us proceed with the celebrations. Yeah. Few words about the award. It is a prestigious recognition presented to the authors of the top 3 papers, and the selection process involves 2 phases. First one, nomination phase. During this phase, all reviewers and editors nominate candidate papers for the best paper award from the papers they are reviewing or editing. In the next phase, each member of the award committee selects their 2 favorite papers from the pool of candidates, which results in shortlisted papers that move to the second phase. In the current case, there were 14 nominated papers, and all of them advanced to the second phase and were individually assessed by the members of the award committee. The final ranking is determined based on the average scores assigned by the committee members. And the winners of the Best Paper Award will receive certificates from SDEWES and the book authored by a member of the SDEWES International Scientific Committee. Next slide, please. And please allow me to introduce the esteemed members of the award committee, all of whom are distinguished members of SDEWES International Scientific Committee. Professor Brian Mattenson, University of Aalborg, Denmark. Professor Antonio Piacentino, University of Palermo, Italy. Professor Rodney Griffith University, Australia. Professor Ingo Stadler, Technical University of Cologne, Germany. Professor Chihuahua Wang, Xianjiatong University, China. And Professor Alexander Vidanshek, Josef Stefan Institute from Slovenia. All these dedicated professionals have played a crucial role in the rigorous evaluation process to identify the exceptional papers for the Best Paper Award. And now, without further delay, let us proceed to unveil and celebrate the outstanding authors of the three winning papers. Yes, we can show. The third Best Paper Award goes to the following outstanding paper: Hybrid Wave Wind Energy Site Power Output Augmentation using Self-Adaptive Meta Optimization Algorithm with novelty search. The first author of this remarkable paper is a researcher from Australia. Congratulations to the authors for their outstanding achievement. Next slide, the book Renewable Energy Systems, second edition, and Smart Energy Systems Approach to the Choice and Modeling of 100% Renewable Solutions by Professor Henrik Lund will go to the author team as their well-deserved recognition.
It's online.
I hope that the first author is here. Of the first author, Mehdi Neshat, is virtually present during this session, and would like to invite him to address the audience remotely through the cloud.
Zoom. Okay. Good.
Yes, please.
I'm Mehdi. Very welcome to Australia, a country known for its stunning natural landscapes, diverse wildlife, and its pioneering efforts in sustainable and renewable energy technologies. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to all chairs, committee members, reviewers, and attendees from all around the world who made this prestigious conference, SDEWES, a truly global and enriching experience. We are so happy and deeply grateful for this valuable Best Paper Award. And also, I wanted to acknowledge the outstanding efforts of our team. Their dedication and constructive collaboration have shaped this award-winning research. Thank you so much and have a nice day.
The author theme of the second best paper comes from UK. The paper considers a novel arrangement of metal thin heat recovery device in a dual channel wind catcher system for reducing the building energy demand in temperate climates. The esteemed authors of this remarkable paper will be awarded with a valuable book co-authored by Professor Jiří Klemš, Sustainability in the Process Industry, Integration and Optimization. I hope also we have representing author, the first author, Jiexin Li, virtually present, yes. I would like to invite Jiexin to share some words with the audience through the cloud. Please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
I sincerely appreciate all the staff in the conference. Thanks for the opportunities. Thanks for the awards. I really wish we can build a better future using our sustainable technologies. Thank you so much and have a nice day.
The prestigious Best Paper Award, considered the top honor among the papers, goes to China this time. To the authors of the paper entitled Study on the Gas Liquid Two-Phase Flow Patterns for Hydrogen Production from Electrolytic Water. Congratulations to the authors on these exceptional papers for achieving this distinguished recognition as the best of the best. The award, Professor Klemš's book, Sustainable Process Integration and Intensification, goes to the first author. Is he virtually present? He was not before the start of the session, so no,
Yeah.
okay.
We have someone.
We have someone?
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Yeah. Cheers, guys. And actually, I'm Andre, and I'm a research assistant at Beijing Institute of Petrochemical Technology in Dr. Deng's lab, and also an assistant in Master Candidate Liu. And I'm so glad to be here and represent them. I think I have to say sorry that they cannot be here personally, and I wish we could keep the communications and make the relations stronger in the future. And if you have any academic questions, just email them, and I bet that they will be happy to answer them. And yeah, that's it. And again, appreciations. That's it.
Congratulations to you and the all author team. And finally, I would like to highlight that we have achieved a commendable geographical representation among our award recipients. The first authors of the winning papers came from 3 different countries, showcasing the diversity and international reach of our community. We have 2 Asia-Pacific countries represented, China and Australia, and 1 European country, UK. As we come to the end of this award session, I would like, on behalf of award committee, all SDEWES members, and personnel, of course, to extend our heartfelt congratulations to all awardees. Your remarkable achievements and contributions are truly commendable. So let us join in a round of applause to celebrate the success of our awardees. With this, I officially close the award session and declare the second Asia-Pacific SDEWES Conference officially open. Thank you all for your participation and contributions of our shared endeavors. And maybe the last thing, I would like to invite all conference participants to join outside for a family photo, symbolizing the unity and collaboration within the SDEWES community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so photos is a requirement before you get your coffee. So we do a big group photo up on the terrace there, and then we have the coffee. Perfect timing. So it's exactly 11 o'clock.